that lets you save.
I think trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes is something that is difficult for a lot of people, but very beneficial if you can do that. You can say, hey, this person may be feeling this because, or if I was in that situation, I may be feeling the exact same way.
Welcome to Exploring Mind and Body with Drew Tadia. Drew is an expert in nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. And he wants to help you live a healthier, longer, and more active life. Now here's your host, Drew Tadia.
Welcome to another edition of nationally syndicated Exploring Mind and Body. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community. We're coming at you with a brand new show. We appreciate whether you're listening on terrestrial radio across the country or as a podcast around the world. We certainly wouldn't be here without you. So stick around. We got all that coming up.
This is Exploring Mind and Body. Naturally improve your lifestyle one show at a time with your host, Drew Tadia.
I want to talk about kindness. I just think it's a topic that could be talked about a bit more often, could be more addressed. So I'm going to talk about that today, but especially at this time of, how do you say, this time, what's going on, everything that's going on. It's not, I don't feel like there's a simple solution. There's like nothing's going away. This is, I don't want to get into it too much, but a lot of people are waiting for things to get back to normal, and I don't think things are getting back normal. Like this is it. This is what it's going to look like, at least for the foreseeable future. And a lot of people are stressed out and have challenges dealing with emotions, and that's when it's most important to practice that caring, empathy, love, kindness. So that's when it's most important to practice, but that's also when it's the hardest to do. And here's the thing, it's like when it's the holidays, right? So Christmas, you have family, stressful, you have finances, presents, sometimes traveling, and that is the most stressful time of year. And exercise is the number one way to reduce stress, but it's also the least amount of time people work out. It's kind of funny. But then you have summer as well. Most people, good number of people don't really work out in the summer because camping and traveling and spending time with friends and family, but that's the same as holidays when you have, that's the same, the holiday season, that's the same as Christmas, for example. So I was just comparing the two, we need to exercise to reduce stress, right? But at the holidays, most stressful time of year, people don't. But it's the same thing right now. I feel like it's the same thing right now, is a good majority of our population is stressed out for whatever reason. Like, it's an interesting paradigm and how that works, because it's like they conflict. And I relate most things to food and exercise because that's what we do. But I mean, it's the same thing at the grocery store, right? Like during the holidays, when you should be eating healthier and cleaner because our stress is so high, that's when we go and we buy the pies and pastries and refined sugar, right? So we have to kind of flip that around. We have to make better choices. And I think when it comes to understanding and anger and frustration, like with friends or family members, it's something that most of us don't practice. Like it's not something you learn in school. It's not something that, you could read books and learn about it, but it's not something that we openly work on, practice. And I think that we'd be much better off if we did. But it's really that understanding of trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, which is challenging, of course, but try to see the situation from someone else's perspective. Usually we have so much tunnel vision, like it's all about me. It's that ego. I don't know if anyone's a Eckhart Tolle fan, but he talks about the id. I haven't read his book for quite a while. Id, ego, and superego, I think. Or that could have been Freud. I studied Freud in university. I loved it. I'll tell you this quick story. I was in university, and it was my graduation year. And early on in university, they stick you with the worst courses. You have to get up super early, and 7 a.m. was early for me at that time. So you have to get up really early. You have to run across campus, from one class to the other. And they just don't do anything like you're a freshman or it was your first or second year, whatever. I went to junior college for 2 years first and then university. But some people go straight to university. At any rate, early on in college or university, they give you it's kind of funny. It doesn't really make sense. As I got to my graduation courses in my last year of university, they gave you it was like the courses were easier. There was more group discussions, there was less exams, there was more freedom, I felt like. And I was never a good student. I was a horrible student. I couldn't stand school and sitting in a desk. But as I progressed in my schooling, became a better student. But I still struggled in high school. But then I got to college and I was like, this isn't so bad. I could pick some of my own courses. I actually enjoyed some of the things I was doing. And then I went to university. I wouldn't say I didn't love every class, but I really enjoyed freedom of in most cases, the teachers were get your work done or don't. If you don't, you're going to fail. And then in high school, they're holding your hand and they're no chewing gum in class, take your hat off. And I'm like, don't we have other things to worry about? And then I got to university and that's what it was like. It was this is your class. They didn't, and for the most part, they didn't really care if you showed up, how often you showed up. And I did really well. I thrived. I was at the top of my class in some of my courses. I remember we were remember doing this one class that stood out because it didn't happen very often, but it was social statistics. And it was like, it actually helped in business a little bit. This is one of my very few business type of courses that helped later on in life. But it was like studying the population of, if this amount of, wasn't math, what kind of math, but if this amount of the population purchases something, then you have to do, you can manipulate this part of the population. Super boring. But like one formula was 3 boards on the wall. And I figured that out a couple times over, not like different problems like that. And people were coming to me and they're like, hey, how did you figure that out? And I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I can't explain this to you. But at any rate, I became a better student when I had more freedom. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I have a really hard time if someone gives me a structure and they're like, you have to learn this way, you have to do it this way. But if you throw something at me, like, figure this out, I can do it. So in the later courses of university, that's how it was like. It was like, get your classes, get your papers done. Of course, we had exams, but study. It was a lot more written stuff. And I became a better writer through practice. And this one professor, I actually tried to get out of his class. So going back to my initial story of talking to my counselor, and I was like, I told her, I said, hey, I'm a senior now. And I said, when I was a freshman, I took all those early classes running across campus. I was like, I'm not doing that this year. I was like, hook me up. And she really liked me. We had a nice connection. And I was like, hook me up with some good classes and good professors. I was like, I've been here long enough. I'm ready to get out. I just wanted to graduate. Like that's all I wanted to do was get out of school. So she was doing a good job making me happy. And then I got this one professor and I sat down and he was like very stern and he was like, he wanted you to show up and you had to participate in class discussions. And I was like, oh man. So I went to her and I was like, I got to get out of this class. I was like, this guy is too much for me. So she was like very confused. She was like, are you sure? She said, people are trying to get into his class or there's a lineup to get in and like, we hear really good feedback about this guy. And I was like, no, he's not for me. I got to get out. So they give you a grace period. I think this was quite a while ago. And so you can join a class and then you have so long to drop it or exchange it. And I needed that class to graduate. Otherwise it was going to be online and I wasn't really doing anything online. It's much different now, but I wasn't interested in sitting in front of a computer desk. So you had a grace period. So I sat there for a couple sessions and I was like, meh. Then I sat there for a couple more and I was like, kind of like this. And then it was like my group discussion. It was a debate and I don't have a problem debating or sharing my opinion. Anyways, it's a funny story because I absolutely loved the class and the professor. Like we had a nice connection. He enjoyed my participation. I remember doing it. So it was like some kind of psychology course, I think. I majored in criminal justice and sociology. So a lot of it was to deal with the brain, or when it was to do with if it was a criminal justice part of it, then it was like studying more of the mind or psychology. That's why I talked about Freud. I had those types of classes of criminals, which I really enjoy. And I'm still infatuated with the brain and how we make decisions and why we do certain things. So it's just funny how in most cases it didn't translate business or what I do full time. At any rate, so I told this long drawn out story. We had this group discussion and I'm always think outside the box. I've always been like that. So we had this group discussion and I was just like, I was throwing these crazy ideas out there. And I was like, and we had like everyone, we had to break down the story of like what it meant and how it was perceived and maybe symbolization. So this guy was like hallucinating. This guy was like walking down this road and he was hallucinating. And then he ends up at a house and he doesn't really know what he's doing at the house. So, my gosh, I haven't thought about this story in a long time. But I said, okay, the guy's on drugs. And he ended up in some like field because he was eating mushrooms all night. I'm in university, remember? And then he like then he's trying to get more drugs. So he stumbles up onto the porch of this other house and the house ends up being a drug dealer's house. So he's trying to find more meds to keep him going so he doesn't have to sleep. It was this crazy long drawn out, and everyone understand like this is a graduate course and everyone's a bit more, I don't know, like intellectual and they're like trying to do everything perfect and trying to make the professor happy. And then everyone's like, okay, like no one really likes to participate in those group discussions. I loved it. So everyone like kind of thought I was a bit crazy. This was early on in the year. We didn't really know each other that well. And everyone's like, okay, like whatever, but you're telling the story because you had to pick one person. Like everyone was supposed to contribute, but no one really contributed. Everyone just sat there. You have to pick one person to share the story of how you perceived, and then you make up exactly what happened. So I stand up in front of the class and the guy was like super like, our professor was like very like professional and like he always had like a tie and like iron shirts and like he was like like almost like authoritative, like very stern with So I get up and I tell the story. of like this drug, and everyone else is like, oh, he must have had mental health issues, or he must have had issues at home, so he was running away trying to find a happier place. And I was talking about how he's on drugs, stumbling around trying to find more drugs. And the professor and everyone else's story was like very similar. And the professor asked me to stay after class, and he said, I absolutely loved your story. He said, no one has come up with anything that original. Everyone was pretty much the same. And he said, we've been doing this story for years. And he's like, he basically said it was so nice to have a different perspective. Oh my gosh, that makes me laugh. Everything happening right now is causing issues. It's causing problems in families and friends, and it's causing that separation. And we have to look at our lifestyle. We have to understand that this is how it is right now, and we have to find a way to deal with it. I feel like a lot of people are kind of holding their breath or waiting for things to change or things to get better. And I don't really feel like that's the proper way to go about it, just because like we have to be prepared. Like, what if this is how life is? Like how long is it going to be like it's already been, at least at the time of this recording, it's been a year and a half. So instead of waiting, we have to prepare now, and we have to have a different mindset, and then we have to practice that compassion and empathy. And we don't know what's happening in other people's lives. We really don't. And some people could be going through a very stressful time. The only stipulation there, I suppose, is like, I don't think because you're stressed out, you have the right to treat people less than. Or like, I know like stress is crazy. Like stress makes people do all kinds of crazy things. And I don't mean that to put them down. I just mean like the ability for some people, for most of us, to be able to deal or cope with stress is very difficult. Like most people can't really handle it. They don't know what to do. Like we weren't conditioned to. Back in the day, we were chasing animals. That's where we have the fight or flight. Like you actually had to fight an animal for food or for survival, or you ran away. And that's in us, like innately, we're born with that. So we don't have that. Like it's a different world. You sit in front of a computer and then like someone comments on your blue hair, or someone comments on how they don't like your face. And then how do you get a little bit, and then you get your emotions get pressed down a little bit. And then you're like, well, what's wrong with me? And then your mind starts going crazy. And then you're like, oh, and you watch the news, which is always a bad idea in my opinion. And then you hear like, oh, my friend doesn't want to hang out with me because of this. And then it just piles up. And we don't have any way to release that. We don't have any way to deal with our body naturally. Like our lungs, for example, like our heart and lungs work together to help us breathe, right? We don't have a natural function in our body to deal with stress. And the problem is if we don't take any action, or if we don't take any steps towards that stress just keeps building up, and it makes our minds go a little bit crazy, or our minds turn into moods and emotions, which then addresses our physical body. And then if you want me to go even deeper, is that I feel major disease in our body starts with stress. It's like a seed, a thought, and then it becomes words, and then it becomes actions, and then before you know it, we're dealing with these major diseases in our body. I say disease, I share this often, but anytime you have a disease, you have dis-ease in your body. I think it's easier for us to understand. It's dis-ease. It's not this big scary word of disease. Our bodies tell us things. So when we're stressed out, our body does things like maybe we have these thoughts in our mind that aren't usually there. Maybe they're angry thoughts or frustrated thoughts that aren't usually there. Your body's telling you something. If you start limping around, your body's telling you something. It's not telling you that you're going to have to limp forever. It's saying, hey, something needs to be addressed. And if that's not addressed, something else is going to start to happen physically on our body. So if your right side, right hip, ankle, knee starts bothering you and you start limping, you put more pressure on the other side, then sooner or later that side's going to be like, hey, why do I got to take the full load? So that other side's going to start bothering too. And all that is communication between your body and your mind. It's like, hey, we got to do something to fix this. But the problem is that we don't pay attention to our body. Like we don't see what's going on. Like we don't pay attention to what's really happening. I'm reading this really good book, and he says, it's Pete Agoscu, and he has this whole a whole training method of healing yourself, basically. And he was saying that be the CEO of your health. I just thought that was cool as a business. Like, that's a great way to look at it. Like, be in control of your own health. And unfortunately, many people are waiting for someone else to help them. And don't get me wrong. I feel like, well, in most cases, we'll all need some other help or care at some point. But to be in control of your own health and understand that you have a choice to decide how you're going to act, how you're going to behave, how you're going to respond, and how you're going to treat your body, mind and life as a whole, holistically. How you're going to treat yourself as you live your life, as you age, as you get older, as you feel younger. I was watching this clip of this guy. He said he was 50 years old, and he looked good. Like he was like a bit muscular. And one of the guys says, "You look fantastic." And they were talking about age and how 50 is like really old. I don't feel like age has anything to do with how old you are, my personal opinion. But he's just saying, "Oh, I'm really old." And the guy's like, "Well, you look fantastic." And he's like, "I feel fantastic." He said, "I'm taking great supplements. I'm eating right. I'm working out." And he's like, I don't know what he said. He's 50, 55 years old. And he said, "I'd never felt better." And I just thought that was such a breath of fresh air, because so many times you hear people getting a bit older and they're like, that's just age, or, I'm getting older. And I'm like, are you doing anything about that? And then, of course, the thing is, you take that accountability away from your actions. You take the accountability away. You're just like, oh, that's not anything I can do about that. There's nothing I can control. And in most cases, I feel like you can always do something. And if it's not physically, often it's your mindset, like something that you can do for your mind and body. And that's the whole thing about this empathy conversation that I want to address here, is that we don't know, like I was saying, we don't know what other people are going through. We don't know what they're dealing with in their life. So we can try to be a bit more compassionate and understanding. I think trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes is something that is difficult for a lot of people, but very beneficial if you can do that. You can say, hey, this person may be feeling this because, or if I was in that situation, I may be feeling the exact same way. And then you can understand. And then if you can understand someone's situation, you can communicate a little bit better. You have more of an open mind, and you can maybe even feel their feelings of frustration, maybe why they're holding back, why they have feeling like they have some issues going on. But if there's no, in most cases, disagreements are around communication, lack of communication, and how people feel about one another, or about how they feel in a situation. That's in most cases communication issues. Like, a lot of people shut down completely. They don't want to talk. Yeah, I heard this really good quote. I think it was from Tim Ferriss. And he said, you can tell, what did he say? It was something along these lines. This isn't verbatim, but he said something like, you can tell the success of someone by the amount of difficult conversations they're willing to have. Or the more difficult conversations you're willing to have, the more successful you'll be. Something like that. I just thought that was so true in many cases. Of course, it is in business. Like, you have to negotiate, and you have to work through problems. You have to be a problem solver, and you have to find solutions. But then in personal life as well, like, we don't want to have those difficult conversations. We don't want to sit down and be like, I mean, I certainly don't. We don't want to sit down and be like, okay, how can we hash this out? How can we find a solution? And like, it could be with anyone. It could be friends or family. It could be a business partner. And like, just like making yourself sit down and getting through those issues is a challenge. Like, we don't want that to happen. We just want to push everything under the rug and be like, things will work themselves out. Things will work themselves out. And unfortunately, they rarely do. They usually don't work themselves out until you actually sit down. And in most cases, like, we wait for our stress levels or anxieties to get like really high. Then we don't know how to function. We don't know how to deal with them. Then we blow up, and we have these big arguments, and we say things that we may not want to be saying or probably shouldn't be saying. But I think that begins with understanding the other person and trying to figure out, or not figure out, but try to figure out how they see things. But then again, we have, I also think it goes back to controlling your own emotions and understanding that in most cases we are grown-ups. We have to control our own emotions and understand that anger and that frustration and lashing out isn't really going to solve anything. In most cases, it makes it worse. Might make you feel better for a moment, but in most cases, it's not really going to do anything for you. It's certainly not going to fix any situation. So when it comes to healing those relationships or creating better relationships, I think that's the very root, is having open doors of communication, talking about the different subjects, but then also trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding that they may be going through a difficult time, which may not even be related to you. I remember this one time, this might be slightly different, but I remember this one time I was going to a radio station, and you have to book your time, and it could be expensive. Other people are waiting to get in there, and it was just down the street. And these two people got in a little fender bender. They didn't know what to do. They stopped in the middle of the road, and it was a very odd situation. And I was actually walking to the local radio station here, and they stopped in the middle of the road, and they were like confused. They didn't know what to do. And I'm like walking to when I see them, and they're like kind of confused walking around. There's cars passing by, and then I get closer, and then I said, "Hey, is everyone okay?" And then one of them, I got to call the police. I don't have a phone. So I said, "Okay, here's the phone." I said, "You guys should really think about moving your vehicles out of the road." No, like completely defensive, like probably like a bit confused, angry. No, I'm not moving my car anywhere. Like, everything was the other person's fault at this point. So I said, okay. I said, here's my phone. So I waited there on the sidewalk for about 15 minutes. So I was 20 minutes late, whatever it was. And the police showed up, and they said, move your cars from the middle of the road right now. So that was the first thing they did, for obvious reasons. Like, it's dangerous and they don't want another issue on top of that. So anyways, I get there and then they're upset at the station. I go, you're late. What were you doing? And then there was like that initial clash of like, what are you doing? People are waiting. You got to be here on time. And then if I didn't explain that, so some people don't say anything. I thought about not saying like, hey, I was helping someone out. Like, okay. I thought about being like, hey, I'll do better to get here next time. I know it's my fault. I'll take full accountability. And then later on in the conversation, I said these two people needed help. They're using my phone. And then it was like, and then they relaxed a bit. They're like, oh, okay, I understand. Maybe I shouldn't have got so upset. So it worked out through that communication, but you don't know why someone was late. Like, you may want to sit down and have a conversation of like, how's your day going? Is there any reason, especially as an employee, I would do that. Like, is there any reason that you showed up like a half hour late when you're supposed to be here on time? Oh yeah, this and this happened. It's one thing, like, I think we use those as excuses often, like, to take that accountability from yourself. So the first thing you could do is like, I know it's my job to be here on time regardless of what happens, but this is what happened. Obviously, if it happens like every day, like the dog ate my homework, that's one thing. But if it's one thing that comes up and it's like, okay, obviously that situation where someone is urgently needs a cell phone, it's not going to happen very often. But again, you can't use that stuff as an excuse all the time. Like, if you're late all the time and you always have a reason, then we got some problems, right? But if you guys have any questions or comments on this topic, feel free to throw them at me and we'll talk about them together. But so when I was talking about understanding, like putting yourself in someone else's shoes, the other thing is like for us, when we go through frustrating times, I feel like we have to work on reducing our stress levels all the time. So many times people only address stress, like difficult times in their life, as a treatment. So, okay, things are difficult. I got to go get help. I got to start working out. I got to talk to someone. I got to go see a psychologist, like whatever it is. That's only when they're stressed out. But what if you did that on a regular basis? Like, what if you're always working out? So let's say, for example, our stress level is here all the time. Like, our stress level is always here. Like, we don't really do much about it. And then a stressful time comes up in our lives and stress goes here. So then we start to do things like I just said. So we start to slowly reduce our stress and then we stop here, right? But it's still up here on a regular basis. So what if our stress is like around here and then we started to work out and maybe you have a counselor, you have someone you could talk to, friends or family, and then maybe you're putting good quality foods in your body. So your stress is here on a regular basis. So when something stressful comes up, it only goes up to here. So you're still in control of your emotions. You're still in control of the words you say, the thoughts you think. Like, we all know what it's like to go in a downward spiral of being like, I can't control anything. I'm losing my mind. So if your stress level is up here on a difficult day, you don't always have to worry about being through the roof. But the thing is we have to continually try different things to reduce our stress levels and live that holistic lifestyle in prevention as opposed to treatment. So if you're working out regularly, your stress levels are going to drop. So instead of being like, okay, only reason I'm got to work out is because summertime's coming, I got to get in my bikini, or Christmas is coming, I got to get in that little black dress. So, and don't get me wrong, there's positives to setting those little goals for yourself, for those little achievements. But if it's only for a short term, so here's what happens is a lot of people come to us in the spring. I always say January, February is not our busiest time, but after that, we get a little bit busier and busier right before summer comes, and then everyone's camping and vacationing. So then summer comes, and they work so hard to get fit, wearing less clothes, summer dresses, whatever it is. And then throughout the whole summer, stop working out, stop eating right, stress levels go up a bit. You're staying later, visiting with friends, stress level goes up, and then stress levels here, and then back into your regular routines. And we have kids going back to school, and then we have more economic, political situations going crazy right now. And then that's where we have people that really don't know how to deal with what's going on in the world. Like, then we hold on, we're here, and we're like, okay, our stress level's up here, and we're like, okay, it's going to get better. It's going to get better, but we're not doing anything about it. We're just hanging on like, things are going to get back to normal. I just got to do this for a little bit longer, instead of taking action for yourself and lowering your stress levels through different ways. So I mean, that's one thing that you can do for yourself to offer that empathy and compassion, because just think about yourself being super stressed out. Like, the more stressed out we are, the less patience we have with ourselves and others. The quicker we are to lash out, the quicker you are to yell at your dog, your kid, your spouse. So the more stressed out we are, the less ability we have to be understanding for other people, which is why we need to continually reduce our stress levels, bring those stress levels down, and then be able to have those conversations and communicate properly. Because if we're not able to communicate, that's where those issues stem from. And then they just continue to pile up and get worse and worse until there's a giant blow up. And then, I don't know, like, usually that blow up, like, you get here and here, and you have like a big meltdown. Maybe you have a big argument at the office or at home, and then things seem seem to get, okay, you let the air out of the balloon, things seem to get back to normal. And then all of a sudden it builds back up because we're not doing something continually to help reduce those stress levels and to help improve your health, which will, in that holistic manner, will help everyone as a whole. As we wrap things up here, for now, is trying to be compassionate and understanding through other people and understand that everyone's going through a difficult time right now. Some people are a little bit better than others. Some people are much worse than others. Like, that's life. But we need to take action and not let those emotions take over, like take control. I feel like the worse they get, like the deeper we dig ourselves into a hole, it's the harder it is to dig ourselves out. It really is. And you can tell how people are. Like, people are reacting much more differently these days. It's easier to set people off. It's easier to get in an argument. It's easier to disagree with someone. And that comes from, I feel like it comes from lack of compassion. It comes from lack of understanding and just trying to be in a loving and caring place. And I mean, of course, I'm not always there myself. I'm no saint, that's for sure. But I feel like it's something we can all work on. And that's something I try to say to myself. I think to myself is that, hey, maybe they're going through a difficult time. Or I think, like, why are they saying those things? Why are they posting those words? Like, even if it's not directed at anyone in particular, you see people doing some really odd things, and you can only get like out of character, almost out of body. Like, did they actually say those things? And you can only guess that they're going through a really difficult time in their life, and hope, like, maybe if you deal with them, you be a bit more patient with them, and you can think good thoughts for them and hope that things get better for them. You could even offer help. You know, the thing is, sometimes in difficult situations, it's some people, they don't want help. Some people don't want help. Some people don't want to change. It's really difficult. Sometimes you can do everything for a person. They can be kind to them. You can be compassionate, and then they can lash out at you. Like, but I think that's the stress, and that's the inability to cope and reduce that stress. And in most cases, you talk to people and you ask them how they're doing in their life and what's happening, what's going on, and their stress levels through the roof. But then you can also look at what they've been doing. Like, oh, I haven't really been exercising. I haven't really been eating right, because life takes over, right? Like, things could be difficult at home. Things could be difficult at school. Things could be difficult with other family members, at work, whatever it is. And then you push that other stuff to the side. Like, well, I can't handle going grocery shopping. I got to do this at home. Or I can't handle doing this extra work at work. I got to go home and address this. So then you have that, like, it is like, again, there's no other way to put it. Like, this exercise is the best way to reduce stress, and there's less people exercising now. And then you have closures and shutdowns, and gyms not even open. Half people aren't going to work out at home. So it's just a difficult position to be in, a difficult place to live in right now. And trying to exercise that extra compassion, I think, will make a big difference, not just for the other people, but for ourselves as well. Maybe we won't be so frustrated. You know, like, finance is a big one as well. Like, people do crazy things. Like, people will go rob a liquor store if they can't feed their family. I remember sitting there. I was in university in the States, and we were having this conversation, and this one guy was trying to explain. He was from a very rough area. He was trying to explain that. So he wasn't justifying it. I felt like I could side with him a bit. And this other lady was like, oh, well, why don't they just go and panhandle or find money somewhere else? and the guy was talking about going to rob a liquor store. Not him, but in his community it happened. And he was trying to explain, like when you have nothing, most of us will never experience that, because we have friends to help out with, family. Like, you have nothing. And I've never experienced nothing at this level before I went to Sri Lanka, when some people had, like, dirt floors, and they had a little bowl of food, and they wanted you to eat it, and they had nothing to eat, but they wanted you to eat it. That what I would call nothing. So the guy was trying to explain, when you have nothing, and you have bills and people relying on you to feed your family, you have nothing. That pressure weighs on you so much, you do irrational things. So he said, sometimes people do crazy things, and they go rob liquor stores. And he was just trying to explain it. He wasn't saying that it's right or wrong. But she was like, well, why don't they just go borrow money from family? Like, because family's in jail. Right? How's that for an answer? And again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, like, when our stress is at its peak, our mind isn't working the way it usually works. And then we do things that doesn't really add up. It's out of character. And then we don't have a whole lot of compassion in the world right now. I feel like there's more separation, and there's higher powers that maybe, just maybe, turning us on one another. So it's through the roof right now. And if we could find a way to be a bit more understanding, I feel that we could get through this together, not separately or individually. Have a great day, everyone.
True Form Life.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Exploring Mind and Body. Once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our True Form Life community. You can always find us on Facebook.com/TrueFormLife. We post up there a couple times a day on our story. We're always trying to bring you more content around living a healthy lifestyle, whether that be nutrition, fitness, lifestyle, and more. We also have free challenges that we do at least once a month. So if you follow us along there, you'll be able to join maybe a plank challenge or a squat challenge, Tabata challenge, whatever it may be. We'd love to have you join us. We're also on Instagram.com/DrewTadia. Again, we're posting up there a couple times a day along with our story, all dedicated to keeping you fit and healthy and on track. Our main website is TrueFormLife.com. If you want to check out some of our products, some of our services, or if you just want some great content from videos to blog posts and recipes and more, we got all that at TrueFormLife.com. Once again, thank you so much for being here. That's it. That's all I got. I'm out of here. As always, I'm your host, Drew Tadia, in health and fitness for a better world. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Exploring Mind and Body with True Form Life's Drew Tadia, fitness expert. To find out more about the show, Drew Tadia, or to listen to past shows, visit exploringmindandbody.com.